Welcome to the Art of Listening to Your Body podcast. My name is Jin Ong and I'm your host. I practice as an osteopath and psychosomatic therapist and am fascinated by the mind-body connection and how your physical body is a manifestation of your emotional state. I help people get unstuck from their chronic pain and live the life they want, grounded in values and driven by purpose. My aim is to create awareness to the underlying emotions behind pain, injury, and disease in the body. Join me to learn more about the story of your body, what different issues may indicate, how to release emotions so that you can prevent problems, as well as inspiring pain story interviews. Monica Graves is an international speaker and mind, body, spirit wellness coach who has been teaching global health and wellbeing traditions for nearly 15 years. She spent over 6 years working as a Vedic master educator and retreat host at the Chopra Center for Wellbeing, learning under the mentorship of Dr. Deepak Chopra and many world-renowned visionaries. Then, in 2015, Monica sold nearly all of her belongings, journeyed to Central America, and launched her company, Soulbare Wellness. For 5 years and counting, Monica has lived home free as an international nomad, traveling the world to facilitate experiential, thought-provoking workshops, retreats, lifestyle coaching, and workplace wellness programs. Monica joins us on this episode to further her simple yet profound mission to instigate vibrant health, emotional resilience, and purpose-filled life within each and every person she meets. Welcome, Monica. Thank you so much for joining me all the way from Panama.
Thank you so much for having me, Jen. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. So can you start telling us a little bit about yourself, your origin story? How did you get to doing what you're doing right now?
It's such an interesting question. It has so many layers and different facets to the answer, but I always kind of equate it to my journey from the time I was young has been one series of leaps of faith after another, and they just keep getting bigger and bolder the more that I develop my trust in myself. And sort of the biggest leap of faith that got me on the path of spiritual wellness and Ayurvedic health was making the decision to move to California, sight unseen. So I'm originally an East Coast girl and grew up in a really traditional family where your life is pretty much predicted for you. The moment that you're born, you'll go through school, go through college, get a reasonable degree, get the husband, the house, do the thing, have the kids, build the life. And when I was 8 or 9 years old, one of my uncles gave me a bunch of Beach Boy cassette tapes. And so I was this young girl in Pennsylvania listening to the Beach Boys sing about being a California girl. And I always sensed this liberation, this freedom, this carefree lifestyle in their music. And so I decided at that age that I would move to California as soon as I could. And wasn't quite ready to go there for college, but as soon as I graduated from university in New York, I packed up everything that I own in my tiny little Nissan Sentra, drove out there with a partner, and we moved out to San Diego completely sight unseen, and was not prepared. As with many great leaps of faith, I think we had about $1,000 between the two of us saved to start building our life together. And so we lived in a tent for the first month and really got immersed in this whole new world, this whole new culture of spirituality and living amongst nature and really being open to what is available in terms of sort of like new age alternative ways of thinking and approaching life. And, fortunately we're able to settle in, get a job, get a home, start to build that life together. But the more I was exposed to this other way of thinking that was not so linear, that I was kind of raised with, that was more fluid, that was more in tune with magic, that was more in tune with what's possible when I do trust myself and kind of let my dreams guide me rather than listening to the voice of expectation. It all just led me into this incredible career path of health and wellness and spirituality.
Wow. I love it. It's a really common theme when I speak to people like yourself who are in this coaching and wellness space, is that they didn't follow that linear path of going to school, going to university, getting the job, climbing the corporate ladder, getting the house, getting married, having kids.
Yes.
So, yeah, if you feel like you're stuck on that path, then know that there definitely is another way. So,
Mhm.
how old were you when you moved to San Diego?
I was fresh out of college, so I had just turned 21.
Right. And what did you study at university?
I studied marketing and management. I took a very traditional path. I kind of dabbled in a lot of different things. And I know we're going to talk about Ayurveda, and my personality type is the one that wants all the options and very rarely likes to commit to a particular path, which
What
I
dosha
always
is
felt
that?
it's Vata.
Right.
Vata, yeah. And maybe some of the listeners can resonate with that. And I always found that as a source of frustration. Like, why can't I follow through with things? Why do I always need that new adventure, that next level of excitement? And I realized in studying Ayurveda and learning more about myself that it just wasn't in my nature to have that sense of longevity when it comes to particularly my career path. And so giving myself the freedom now to know that that's a part of who I am and be able to build it into my lifestyle has been such a liberation. It's been absolutely incredible.
Yes, I love the doshas, and we will definitely talk about them. And I love how you'll be able to intertwine it into your own story. So you'll speak to all the vatas out there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
So tell us a little bit about that journey. You opened your mind, you were in San Diego, and then what happened? You were in marketing, you'd finished this study,
Hmm.
but what did you go on to do?
Yeah. Yeah, so I studied marketing and management after trying on a whole bunch of different majors. And when I moved to San Diego, I was able to secure a job at a marketing firm. It was a small scale firm in San Diego, but we worked with companies all over Southern California. And because it was a smaller office, I was able to really quickly move my way up the ranks. And by the time I was there for just 2 years, I was the director of program management. So I was traveling all over Southern California, visiting clients and really feeling this sense of like kind of badassery that I had made this life in California, coming with next to nothing, but just a dream and an open heart. And things were going really well. I was making a really, great name for myself, developing a beautiful community and group of friends. And in 2008, I was introduced to yoga and meditation for the very first time. And actually, it was kind of against my will. I always tease my friend that took me to my first yoga class that I hated her for 59 minutes because so I had just come home from seeing a client in LA that day, and I was ready to unwind my way, which is a whiskey sour overlooking, the sunset on the Pacific. And I got home ready to change and head to the beach. And she said, "Good, you're just on time." And I said, "Okay, for what?" She said, "I'm going to yoga and you're going with me." I said, "Oh no, girl, I got a whiskey sour with my name on it. You have fun. I'll see you when we both get home later." And she convinced me. And so I went. And anybody who's listening who studies yoga will commiserate with me when I say that it was a Vinyasa 2 hot yoga class. So lots of arm balances, lots of Sanskrit, lots of sweat. And I have never felt more awkward and out of place in my life. I had no clue what was going on. I was falling all over myself and just really kind of cursing out my roommate for the entire time. And by the end, by the time we went into Shavasana, I just, all that insecurity just melted right out onto the mat. And I felt as if somebody had taken a crowbar to my heart and just really opened me up to this whole idea of what it's like to feel so present and so integrated in body, mind, and spirit. And so that first class in early 2008 really kind of whet my appetite, and I became this insatiable sponge, just absorbing and soaking in everything I could in this mecca of new age health and wellness and spiritual teachings. And so I was attending every yoga class I could, every meditation class I could get my hands on, studied a lot of different modalities and methodologies, and really just was learning so much about myself and what was possible in the world. And still working my marketing and management career, never would have thought about leaving that position because it was really financially cushy. And later that year, it's 2008, the economy was tanking for everybody. And so my small marketing firm couldn't survive the crash. And so they closed their doors in September of that year. And I immediately realized it was such a blessing. It was such a sign from the universe, because I probably would not have left that career path, because it's linear. It's what I was supposed to be doing. And the minute that I got that notice that I was being laid off, I thought, perfect. This is an opening. I am not going to take another job unless it has something to do with yoga or meditation. And kind of made that commitment to myself there, that I was ready for this shift to occur.
Oh, incredible. And I guess that's what's happened with COVID for a lot of people. And hopefully some of them can see the opportunity in this as well. And that was my first year of working too, 2008, when there was a bit of a global financial crisis. But I knew nothing different because it was my first year of work. So I'm like, is it meant to be this busy or this quiet? I'm not too sure. But the interesting thing is, I think the health industry always thrives in crisis, because there's actually more stress, more pain, more illness during that period of time, unfortunately. All right, continue on. So what happened next?
Next was a whole trial and tribulation. So and I'm sure many of you listening can relate to this. When we kind of set our mind to something and we think we know what we want, we're letting the heart guide the way, then it comes with this whole set of initiations and really testing ourselves. Like, am I brave enough to do this? Am I brave enough to trust that I'll be supported in this? And that's exactly what happened for me with making this transition. So I was able to apply for unemployment and give myself 6 months to look for a new job. And really with this intention in mind, like, it's got to be wellness oriented. And I went to so many different interviews, group interviews, solo interviews at wellness centers and yoga studios and meditation centers and, everything that I could find. Nothing panned out. And
what kind of jobs were you going to try and do at these wellness centers?
Anything. Anything. I just wanted to get my foot in the door, I mean, in a perfect world, I probably would have applied my marketing and management skills in that realm, but I didn't have that necessity at that moment. I just knew I was ready to make the leap. But as my 6 months of unemployment started coming to a close, I was faced with a really harsh reality of like, okay, maybe this is just a pipe dream. Maybe I should start applying for marketing jobs, or else I'm, packing up and heading back in the center to Pennsylvania. And I started to apply for marketing jobs as well. And all of this happened so synchronistically and just timed magically together that I ended up finding another director of program management role at a pretty well-known large-scale marketing firm, and simultaneously found a very entry-level position working at the front desk of the Chopra Center for Wellbeing. So I found both of these jobs on Craigslist. Yeah. Yeah. So these are Craigslist jobs, right? So I'm just like throwing my resume in the ring with who knows how many hundreds or thousands of others. And, but both of these positions, these companies, they ended up calling me for a phone interview the same day. Had the phone interview, went really well. The in-person interview for each position came a day apart. And then the call for the job offer for both positions came within 1 hour of each other. So first the marketing, yeah, exactly. And being tested, really was a true test, because, the marketing firm called first and offered me the position. And I think it was like double what I was making at the previous firm. It was really great potential for moving up in the company and continuing on my very linear career path. And an hour later, I explained to them I needed a little bit of time to think about it. And an hour later, the Chopra Center called and offered me the job. And I shared very vulnerably with her that I had this other job offer that I needed to consider also. And, it being a director role versus entry level, the salary was about 4 times as much. And SoCal's not cheap. So that definitely came into consideration. And, so the hiring manager at the Chopra Center was so gracious. She said, I totally get it. You've got to do what's right for you and your home and your family and your vision for the future. But just promise me that you'll do one thing. And I said, okay, what's that? She said, as you're making this decision, before you call me back, I just want you to ask yourself, what is my Dharma? And I said, okay, Christy, I'll consider that. Thank you so much. We'll
Did you
talk
know what Dharma
tomorrow.
was? Or did you have to Google it?
Immediately, I hung up the phone and went straight to Google. I was like, what the hell is a Dharma? I was like, okay. I didn't even know who Deepak Chopra was when I went for the interview. That's how much of a newbie I was. So I'm watching these videos and learning what a Dharma is, and just tears were flooding my eyes. It felt like that same moment in that first yoga class where I just had this whole world of possibility opening up to me. And, you know, it still felt like a lot to consider. Like my heart and my mind were in such direct competition with one another in that moment. And all my family members back home were like, you are crazy if you do not take the marketing job. Like, meditation is a hobby. You cannot make a career out of that. It is something that you do in your spare time, right? They're thinking of these like very humble, struggling spiritual gurus. And so like, you got to take the marketing job. This is what you went to school for. This is the path that you carved out for yourself. And fortunately, I had a whole slew of hippie friends in California that were like, follow your dreams, man. Are you crazy? Like, it's Deepak Chopra. And they were really in my corner, and were some of the first folks that taught me how to and know that it can be okay. So yeah, I started my career there in 2009.
Amazing. So can you tell us a little bit about what Dharma is?
Absolutely. So Dharma is a Sanskrit word, and Sanskrit is an ancient language, much like Latin or Greek. And Dharma is essentially translated as your purpose in life. So it really encompasses, and you know, when we think about purpose, there's a little bit of this stigma that purpose is kind of one thing, it's one task, it's one mission that you came here to serve. And certainly that is an underpinning tone of it. But Dharma is really the culmination of all of your gifts, all of your talents, all of your strengths and desires and passions rolled into one and put into action to be of service to the world, while in turn serving yourself. And so your Dharma shifts and changes. And yes, it's always sort of guiding you towards this one singular mission that's kind of represented by the archetype of being the explorer, or being the lover, or being the mother and the nurturer. All the little pieces of your Dharma support you in living out and really embodying that archetype. But the Dharma is you being in flow and loving what you do and how you show up in the world. And I like to think about it as those moments in life when it's like time just stands completely still and your heart feels as wide as the world. That's when you know you're in your Dharma.
Oh, sounds good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so some people will be like, oh my gosh, he works at the Chopra Center, and they know Deepak Chopra. He's written a lot of books out there, and some people won't know him. I know that Deepak Chopra was kind of one of my introductions into this realm. I was working in Brisbane, I was house sitting, and I pulled Quantum Healing off the shelf, which is, I believe, one of his first books, along with Perfect Health, which
it's
is
an early one.
Yeah, I recommend to everyone. And I was like, wow, this is this medical doctor who is talking about the spiritual realm. But I'll hand it over to you. Who is Deepak Chopra and the Chopra Center?
Yeah, thanks for that beautiful segue. And it's so true. Deepak was one of the first sort of pioneers of merging Western medicine with Eastern philosophy here in the US. And he follows a very similar path. It's like what you shared. A lot of us are kind of raised to be linear in the way that we approach life, and studied medicine as prompted by his family, as what was expected by him, and became a really incredible, you know, Western trained doctor. And here in the US, he actually started studying meditation under the guidance and mentorship of Maharishi, as many folks from sort of his school, his generation of yogis and meditators did, and became very curious about bridging this gap between mind, body, and spirit, and understanding how the ancient wisdoms and the modern wellness were able to support one another and become integrated into our wellness plan and our path towards healing and wholeness. And so Deepak and another gentleman by the name of Dr. David Simon, who has since passed, they co-formed the Chopra Center for Wellbeing. And it's actually, the doors of the physical center have since closed, unfortunately, just a couple of years ago, as a matter of fact, but they still have tons of teacher trainings online, as well as in-person retreats when that's available again, all around the world.
Yeah, right. And so what was your experience when you got to work at the Chopra Center? Because was that, another leap of faith and opened more doors for you?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, coming in off of a director role and being entry level at a front desk was a whole experience, very humbling in and of itself. But I just went in with an open mind and a beginner's mind and this willingness to learn and be guided. And the things that it opened up in my life are unreal. I was able to go deep into all of these different methodologies and teachings, and ended up receiving my certifications there in primordial sound meditation, perfect health, Ayurvedic lifestyle, which is based on the book Perfect Health that you mentioned, and 7 spiritual laws of yoga, a hatha-based yoga teaching. And really quickly was able to work my way up there. Started managing the guest services team and overseeing the retail space. So putting my management and marketing degree into use once more. Teaching at various seminars and hosting retreats and workshops and classes for our individual guests that would come in from all around the world. And then eventually, in my last few years there, I was actually managing a brand new department called Workplace Wellbeing, where we bring the teachings of mindfulness, stress management, mind, body, spirit wellness into corporations. So we would host personalized incentive trip retreats. We would speak at conferences and deliver curriculum to large audience, and in some cases going into corporations and developing in-house wellness programs with them.
Oh, that sounds so good.
Yeah, so needed.
And what about your journey with Ayurveda? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm sure you might be able to resonate with this, Jen, and maybe some others too. When I first heard this word, actually, I remember sitting in a coffee shop in this little beach town in San Diego when I first moved there, and I picked up like one of the, SoCal wellness magazines. And there was an article about Ayurveda. This was before I worked at the Chopra Center. And I'm reading this thing and I'm like, Ayurveda? What is this? I had never heard of it before, ever in my life. And, another pinpoint of curiosity, and kind of just let that seed marinate. And so when I started working at the center, I was like, oh, here's this word again. Here's this thing. What is it? And my journey with studying this incredibly ancient body of knowledge, which is at least 5,000 years old, as far as we can tell, really just blew my mind in terms of how it offers us this framework of understanding ourselves to such a deeper and more compassionate degree, understanding how we interact with the world around us, and understanding how we can truly become the conscious creator of our own reality by creating internal and external environments that allow us to thrive. And so I love to think about applying Ayurveda to your life, like creating this living, breathing vision board where like, okay, what happens if I put this color on the board? What happens if I allow myself to do this activity, interact with this person, release this picture that's kind of no longer serving me? And we're just constantly exploring and experimenting and getting curious about what makes life click and brings us into that flow state of Dharma. And, Ayurveda is the Sanskrit word that literally translates to science of life. And I think about it as being in a science lab 24/7 and just getting really playful with the experiments of this human experience.
Yeah. Oh, I find it fascinating. And I just love one of the stories in Perfect Health of Bobby, the guy that has, I think, headaches and low back pain and high anxiety and insomnia and constipation. And that if he had gone to a conventional doctor, he'd probably go to the gastroenterologist for his constipation. He'd be giving sleeping tablets for his insomnia. a
Yes.
painkiller for his headache, and maybe go to see a physical therapist for his low back pain. But actually, Ayurveda looks at the person as a whole and their true nature and how they're meant to express themselves down to their environment, their food, their habits. And you talked a little bit about your Vata, and Bobby was a Vata in that book. And
Mm-hmm.
that actually he can get all of those treatments from one Ayurvedic practitioner.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And Western medicine, for all of its gifts and blessings, is very symptomatic in its approach, and Ayurveda is systematic, where we're really understanding, why is he having lower back pain? Why is he having restless nights? Where has he betrayed himself and his purpose and his own inner voice, and how is that manifesting in the physical? Where can we implement really easy, fun, sensory lifestyle rituals and routines to start to bring him back into equilibrium, so that there's harmony in the body instead of pain?
Yes. And now you do a number of other things. You don't just focus on Ayurveda, even though it's amazing. Can you talk a little bit about how you integrate Ayurveda with how you work with clients?
Yes, absolutely. And Ayurveda is a huge central piece of my work. It's so important for us to unwind and unravel the discomfort, the tension, the toxicity that we are experiencing in this physical human form. Because when we are in that space of restriction or pain or resistance, it's really hard to tap into spirit. It's difficult to have this conversation about my Dharma, my purpose, and being in flow, and we're like, getting out of bed hurts. And, so Ayurveda is really like one of the foundational tools, along with meditation, to start to release some of that constriction, move out some of the toxicity, and approach our daily life, our daily devotions, in a way that create health, harmony, and balance, instead of destroy it through unconscious decisions. And once we start to create that new pathway for ourselves and start to experience a little bit of that harmony, that's when I love to go into deeper conversations around chakras and energy healing, spirituality and connection to the divine, and really awakening to your passionate purpose in life. And I'm kind of I dubbed myself with this title of a Dharma instigator, because the thing that I love more than anything in the world is getting people aligned with what just completely lights them on fire, so that they feel that joy every single day.
Yes. Oh, that's so great.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. And again, that's another theme that always comes up. It's about what lights you up and
Yeah.
what is in line with your values, your purpose to a degree, and how is
Mm-hmm.
it that you want to live life. But then there's all this backstory and different modalities that we can use to facilitate that process.
Mm-hmm.
So, on this journey of opening your mind and your heart and discovering all these new modalities in the wellness and spiritual space, did you uncover some of your own personal stuff?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I mean, you can't be in this world and not face your own stuff.
Was there
Right?
something where you were getting stuck and you knew that you had to go into your history? Was it presenting
Mm.
physically for you, or were you not progressing in life?
I think the biggest thing for me was, and I would see this coming across, and actually one of my coworkers, this is actually, I hadn't thought about this connection until right now. One of my coworkers at the Chopra Center, after a couple of years of being there, she came to me and she said, "Are you mad at me?" And I said, "No, what do you mean?" And she said, "I don't know. I'm just getting this vibe from you that like you're mad at me about something," right? And that was her own insecurity, right? Being reflected in how I was behaving. But I said, "God, not at all. Like, what makes you have that perspective? Like, let me understand this." And she said there were just some moments where I would be really kind of short and distant, which is interesting. So I'm a very loving, open person. And this kind of caused me to explore, like, what's actually going on here. And it started to reveal this pattern in life where I never completely felt like I totally belonged anywhere. And so I always had to like prove myself, or be the most serious one, or be the most focused, or be the high achiever and make people proud and get the gold star. And if I would come up against these moments of feeling like I were not being perfect, there would be this underpinning of self-doubt of like, will I be kicked out of this community? Like, will people start to realize that I don't have value, that I don't have worth? And I think I know now when I'm in the consciousness of it, that when I was in those moments of questioning my sense of belonging and sense of worth, that it would come across as being really cold. It's like I wanted to shrink back and protect myself. And so I really got to look at like, where did this come from? Why do I have this underlying feeling of needing to prove myself and be perfect so that I can belong somewhere and be of value?
And so when you delved into it a little bit deeper, where did that insecurity around a sense of belonging come from?
Way back in the womb. Way back in the womb. My mom and my dad were actually 16 when I was conceived, and they very, very young. And so kind of the story as I knew it growing up is I was born, they were teenagers, and after a year, my father left. He abandoned the family, quote unquote. And so I've actually never met my father. I have no clue what he looks like. I don't know if I have his nose or his personality. Like, there's just this kind of big question mark. And obviously the conscious bits of like, what did I do wrong that he left, right? And never attempted to make contact in all these years of my life. And so that's the piece that I could kind of consciously understand. And then upon deeper reflection and understanding how, generational wounds and lineage wounds happen, and how even decisions and when we're in the womb can affect us and our psychology and physiology. What I learned when I was 13 or 14 years old is that my parents actually decided to put me up for adoption when they became teenage parents. And so I was given up for adoption. Like, I had an adoptive family, but when my mom was in the hospital, the doctors allowed her to hold me, which is very rare in the instance of adoptions, because they don't want that bond to be formed. So she held me for a moment, and then I was taken away from her, given to my adoptive family. And she got back from the hospital and said to my grandma, like, I want my baby back. I want her back. And grandma said, are you sure? Like, you're in high school. This is a huge responsibility. It's like, do you really understand what you're asking for? And she said, yeah, I want my baby back. And so the whole family pulled together. They got a crib and a bassinet and, a bath and all the things just from wherever, aunts and uncles and cousins, and were able to get me back, because it was still within that window in Pennsylvania law at the time. And so there was this knowingness that I was wanted, right? And that I did belong, and they fought for me, brought me back into the family. And I can understand that at the cellular level, I was this little tiny brand new baby that was with her mom and then taken away from her. And the confusion that imprinted, and I imagine that that's when it all kind of started, of like, okay, I'm back now, but what if they take me away again? What if they decide that they actually don't want me anymore? And so, to give props where they're due, my 16-year-old dad did try to be around for a little bit, but he thought that I wasn't going to be a part of the picture. And so he ended up removing himself from the scene.
Mm-hmm. I have lots of questions based on what you just shared.
Yeah.
So the first thing is probably more of a reinforcement around what you said, that thoughts and feelings get imprinted in the womb, which is why I love to get my clients before they're considering having a baby. And sometimes people will approach me and say, I'm going to try and get pregnant next month. And I said, oh, hang on, you've just told me all these issues you've had. Can you hold off a little bit? Because if you don't deal with this now, you can still work with it in future, but it might take a little bit longer. There might be more challenges that come up, because if you're breastfeeding and sometimes you're releasing emotions, that comes out in the breast milk, and the baby can be turned off the breast milk as well.
Yeah.
And then when the child gets older, they usually reflect and they trigger all the things that you haven't worked on. So it's actually way easier to work on it if you get the opportunity to do all of this work before you have a baby. I always say babies do not fix problems, they make them worse.
They're a magnifying glass for the problems.
Yes. So that was that part. And then Yeah, interesting how you're saying that you recognized now with all of your learnings that this was imprinted from the age of one, your 16-year-old dad leaving. Now, can you talk a little bit about him not making contact? Have you tried to make contact with him? Do you want to make contact with him?
There have been times in life, and I feel that it comes in these like 3-year cycles where I'll just have this huge urge to reach out, particularly as I do get older. I'm, 36 now. I'm like, he's, mid 50s, but eventually it may be too late. And so there have been times that I really feel the urge, I really feel the pull. And even in specific healing sessions where the healer has shared, like, his spirit's with you. He just wants you to know that he's with you. And there have been a couple of times that I've talked to my mom about it. Like, can you please give me some kind of guidance, some kind of direction, someone that might know him or know where to find him? And she is a very tightly closed faucet when it comes to leaking information in this realm. She has zero interest in sharing or helping in any way. And so I think that has sort of turned me off to the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the whole fear of the unknown, which is interesting because one of the things that I really support people with is embracing their fear of the unknown and making these, big, crazy, huge decisions. And it's like, what would it mean if we were to come into contact? Like, would it be this whole other wound of not wanting to have a relationship? Where right now I kind of feel that I've healed what's there. And if I open up this whole other realm of connection, could be great, could be terrible, and spin me into this whole other realm of like, okay, now I've got to heal this sense of not being wanted all over again. So I think that's what stops me more than anything.
Yeah. And so with this knowledge, this discovery, what kind of work did you do to help you heal?
I did quite a lot of energetic healing work in, again, being in the Mecca of healing in SoCal. There were all kinds of incredible practitioners and healers. And so I did a lot of Ayurvedic body work to move those stuck emotions through my physical structure. And I did some very esoteric healings with folks that go in and kind of clean out your energy field and help you to heal those spaces, kind of heal those contractual wounds and open you up to the ability to really extract the wisdom from those situations.
Mm-hmm.
So combination body work and energy work.
And you could feel the shifts?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Yeah, the one healing in particular, I'll never forget this. The woman was working on my back and I was seated and I felt as if she had removed this spike that was, as big around as, what is this, like a can of soup, really large in diameter, as if she had removed this spike from the back of my heart. And I could feel the hole where it had once been just stuck and clogging up the energy and really weighing on my heart space. And then she had me envision all of these little basically healers and sweeper cells going into that space, into that opening, and filling it with love, filling it with understanding. And I envisioned, I don't know if you remember the show Fraggle Rock.
No.
Oh.
Maybe can you refresh people that don't know Fraggle Rock?
Yeah, so Fraggle Rock is this show of this old guy with a dog that works in a workshop, like his little science lab. And underneath the ground are these Muppets, these Fraggles, but there are also these little tiny creatures. They're green. They're called dozers, and they go in and they're the construction workers. And I just pictured all these little dozers going in there and like cleaning up this space and like polishing this wound. And really filling me up with this idea that like, okay, that heaviness, that constriction, it's out now. Like you're free to love again. You're free to know that you belong exactly where you are.
Fascinating. And what about your relationship with your mum? Did you have to do any work around that?
Oh goodness, yes. Yeah. And us being so close in age, we really are a lot more like sisters in a lot of ways than the traditional mother-daughter dynamic. And my journey with her really evolved when I was a more conscious and aware adult, and I didn't need her to be anything other than what she is and what she was. I didn't need her to be the mother and the father. I didn't need her to know all the answers. I could just witness her as this woman that thought for me and that did the very, very best that she could to provide a life for me, give me opportunity. And I really, truly honor and respect everything that she has been able to make available to me throughout my life, knowing that she essentially like gave up her childhood so that I could be a part of her family. And I have nothing but the most respect for her now. But it did come with a lot of confusion in the teenage years. And I think many folks can resonate with that dynamic with parent.
Yeah. And so would you say that you got along in your childhood, teenage years, or was there a lot of conflict between the two of you?
I mean, I would say both. A little bit of both for sure. I think that we had a lot of fun together, and we really did have this fun like sister dynamic. And I was always able to tell her everything and anything that was going on with me, with boys and with, you know, drugs and alcohol and just being a teenager and the things you want to get into. And she was always just an open book. I could bring anything to her, and, you know, very rarely would she judge me or chastise me and all of that. But of course we had our arguments. And of course I bucked back and always wanted to take the inch and run a mile with it. And actually that's how I found out that I was adopted for a few days. We were in a real bad fight, and she said this really quick comment that I barely even caught, that was something along the lines of like, oh, I never should have asked for you back.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what does that mean? You know, just out of the heat of the moment, anger, it slipped from her lips, and, you know, a lot of badgering on my end. And she finally shared with me what had happened. But I think in general, we had a pretty close relationship, but just in my nature to buck back against that.
Yes. And
Mm-hmm.
so a couple of things in that. I'm wondering, did you have many conversations with her about those early days? And then the other thing is, you've come to a real place of acceptance and you see her for who she is. So
Mm-hmm.
you've done a lot of your own work. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering, did you bring her into conversations and did you share with her the work you were doing? Because some people think that they have to go and talk to the person in their life that, not that she was an issue,
Mm-hmm.
but, you know, part of, you know, the reason.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas often when I find when you work on yourself, and sometimes
Yeah.
like your dad's not here, but you can come to a
Mm-hmm.
sense of peace of it, you don't actually need to converse with the person. So
Yeah.
probably the first question best to ask is, as you were going through this journey, did you actually need to bring her into any of those working throughs, or were you able to just
Mm-hmm.
heal on your own?
Yeah, that's a really great question and an interesting distinction. And it's actually one of the things that I work with my clients on, is healing the relationship from both sides, from just your perspective.
Mm,
Because we have that opportunity, right? Because both people are influencing this dynamic and this drama that you're playing out together, but it's still the same spectrum of energy. And so because we are a part of that, we can do the healing from both sides, from just our own work. And that's very much was my own process with this whole situation with my mom and my dad. I did a lot of forgiveness rituals to really heal up any residue and negative talk, negative emotions that I was feeling around it. And I think in the early days of my spiritual journey, I wanted my whole family in Pennsylvania to like come along for the ride, because I was just blown away by this new way of thinking, this new way of being, this new way of treating my body and having conflict resolution without screaming and slamming a door, and connecting with the magic of the universe. And I just wanted so badly to like force them into consciousness. And even though it came with well intentions, there was a shitload of judgment that was behind that, right? Like, why are you doing it this way when you could have it like this? And I think in those early days, I probably would have wanted her to go on her own healing journey, to deal with the wounds that she was imprinted with in these early days. And, even before I came along, but I didn't need her to for my own healing path. I just kind of really, really wanted her to. And the shift came when I let go of all of that, of like needing them to be a certain way or adopt a certain belief or be more conscious. And I was just able to share more of my open heart and more of my sense of spiritual connection and life purpose with every visit home, that there are these beautiful shifts that are starting to happen within my family. And it is like that old adage, like if you clean your side of the street, you'll inspire your neighbors to do the same. And it's really beautiful to witness that in practice.
Yes. Yeah. Random thought, I don't know if I should even share it on here, but I remember a couple that I used to live with, and his wife always would go out to the veggie patch and clean up the garden, and he never would. And then all of a sudden, after a few months, he was like, that actually just looks really good. And then he got involved. And I think those analogies are great, like cleaning up your side of the street, because you can't go and change anyone. You have to change yourself first. And then usually through that, you can inspire change in others.
Yes, absolutely. And the real liberation is that you don't need them to change anymore,
True.
because you are so rooted in your own shift that you, like, as I was saying, I can just see and love and respect her for everything that she is and everything that she's been through. And if she never changes or never reaches a certain level of quote unquote spiritual awareness, whatever the heck that is anyways, it doesn't even matter, right?
Yep.
Because my perspective is just pure love, pure compassion from accessing that within myself and my own healing.
Yes. So I think you've answered it in there, but my other question around that was, do you talk to her much around, this history and your growth?
I think during the time that it was all coming up and I had a lot of questions, I would approach her with it when I needed to talk about things. But she's very much a woman that, like, stubbornly, the past is in the past and we are here now. So why bother digging it up?
Mm-hmm.
Without really seeing the value in, like, yeah, but I'm having these challenges in my life right now, this stress, this physical pain, this emotional constriction and inconsistency because of these unhealed spaces in my past. That's not her perspective or her MO at all. So I think we'd have like little bits of conversations here and there, but I've never sat her down and been like, oh my God, let me tell you about this freaking healing journey and the time that I removed your wound from my shoulder. And I think it might be a little bit too much. Like, she's just starting to get into crystals and essential oils. So.
And so you did this work, and I'm sure there's other work, as we always have ongoing work to do, but it sounds like this was a pretty deep wound that you were holding that was maybe causing this lady to feel like you were mad at her. So what changed for you after you did this deeper work in relation to this?
I mean, the interesting thing, and I guess the unexpected thing, was the level of confidence with which I was able to carry myself in the world, because I didn't, and it's not to say that I do not come up against this, because I'm human and we want to belong. We want to be held and adored and admired by the world and accepted. But I felt that I didn't have anything left to prove anymore. I didn't have to go get the next degree. I didn't have to have a certain size home. I didn't have to be the best. I could just be myself and do the thing that came naturally and do the thing that made me happy. And in doing so, I started having more success. I started having more opportunities. I started being able to travel and eventually start my own business, because I let go of all of that expectation of being the perfect one and following all the rules and crossing all the T's. And it just opened up this whole new way of being, where it's all just stemming from confidence and compassion. And I don't even know what's going to come next. And that's kind of the beauty of it. And it so perfectly suits a Vata who doesn't want to have all the answers, right? Like, you want to have that spontaneity in life. And I think that's really the biggest shift.
Cool. Can you go into a little bit more around Vata? Because this work is about getting to know who you are, and you do have a particular nature. Maybe a quick summary of the doshas, and then focusing on Vata because you probably know that best.
Yeah, I've got an intimate relationship with all the doshas just from my clients and my relationships, but oh gosh, high level, 5,000 years of wisdom in 5 minutes.
Is it possible?
Oh yeah, of course. Everything's possible. So just a little snippet, a little teaser. So as I mentioned, Ayurveda is the science of life. And just like modern science, which is based in the periodic table of the elements, of which there are 100 and some now, it continuously grows. Ayurveda, as the science of life, is also rooted in a system of elements, but here there are only 5. And these are known as the Mahabhutas, which are space, air, fire, water, and earth. And these 5 elements comprise absolutely everything in the entire universe, according to Ayurvedic sages. And these elements combine in very physical ways, right? Like, we can understand when we think about these concepts of fire, water, space, we can understand the physicality of what that means. And there is an archetypal energy that is associated with those elements as well. So space is all about potential. Air is the archetype of movement and change. Fire represents transformation and progress. Water is cohesion and connection. And then earth is structure and stability. And so when these 5 elements combine in certain combinations, they create certain doshas or personality types. And even though there are literally countless number of ways that these 5 elements can be combined in different ratios, I like to think of it like an Italian mama who is making her special famous sauce. Like, God is the Italian mama. And mama always has oregano, chili pepper, garlic, salt, and pepper that she puts in her sauce. But mama does not measure. She just throws it in. So, some batches are more earthy, some are more spicy, some have more salt to them. It's the same way when we are coming into existence. God's just like, all right, a little bit more fire in this batch, a little bit more space here. And so our unique combination of the elements falls into 3 different categories of personality types. And those are Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. So Vata is the energy of space and air coming together. So we have potential and change, 2 elements that are really light, they're really quick, they're really mobile. There's not a lot of weight and structure and staying power to them. And so we see this in a Vata person. They're really creative, always spontaneous, changing their hair, changing their boyfriend, changing their location, changing their diet, a little bit flighty, we might tend to call them, because they just always want the next new thing. They have that potential and that changeability to them. And in the body, we see this as someone with really light skin, thin bones, thin brittle hair, very light digestion, light sleep. Just there's not a lot of stuffness to space and air. So we see that in the Vata person. And when Vata becomes disrupted or out of balance, we could call it, and there's too much space and air, the stress response of that is becoming extremely anxious, feeling like a propeller that is totally spinning out of control and is lost in outer space somewhere. And so there's this whole idea of doubt and worry and insecurity because there's nothing grounding it and moving it forward. So each dosha comes with its gifts and its curses, right? And it's about balancing that. So then we move into Pitta, which is mostly fire. It has just a teensy bit of water to kind of temper the sharpness of the fire, but mostly fire. So if you think about a fire, right, it's bright, it's charismatic, everybody wants to gather around the fire and they're just intrigued by its mystery and it draws you in. And that's exactly what a Pitta person does. They're really great leaders, very sharp intellect, sharp tongue. They are big thinkers and strategists, and they know how to like get people to rally and get behind a cause and drive the mission forward. And we see this in their body too, like really fiery digestion, red skin, irritation can occur in the skin because there's so much fire there, early signs of baldness and aging in the skin from that excess heat that's built up. But that fire is really the one that moves us forward in progress. And when there's too much of it, it's like we're just scorching everything from the inside out. So pittas experience a lot of indigestion, heartburn, acid reflux. In the mind, they become extremely irritable, aggressive, judgmental, impatient, all those things where we're like, dude, just take a chill pill. That's pitta at enraged when we have that response. And again, it's just about, okay, there's too much fire here. How can I bring in the other elements to cool it down, chill it out, bring more playfulness in, and not take life so seriously? And then our final dosha personality type is kapha. And this is a combination of water and earth. When we bring those two elements together, we get clay. And if you think about clay and how moldable it is, how soft it is and supple, that's a kapha person. They're really easygoing, very loyal. They have that staying power to be in careers and relationships and homes for a lifetime, right? Because they just kind of like dig their little roots in and commit to one thing and doing it so well, and being the supportive nurturer that holds everything together and creates that structure, that connection, that community. And kaphas are extremely detail oriented. They love like just really just like clay moves so slow. They love taking their time and being methodical with things. And we see this in the body too. There's just more stuffness to them. So they have thicker hair, larger eyes, bigger lips, thicker skin, sometimes bigger bones, slower digestion. And we need that staying power for things to feel contained and safe in life. But the curse to kapha is when there's too much earth and water and too much heaviness, they can very easily enter stagnation, where they're not motivated, nothing excites them anymore, they're stuck in a rut, they're accumulating clutter or weight in the body, and there's just so much heaviness that we need to warm it up with fire and move it out with the change of air.
That was a brilliant summary of all of the things. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
And can you tell us a little bit more about how it is you work with people? Like, what kind of people come to you? What do they ask for help with?
Oh, that's a big question. And you know, I struggle sometimes with this concept of like, I should be a specialist in one thing, right? But the reality is that I do really support folks that represent all of these doshas, that represent all walks of life, that represent all modes of stress response. But the thing that it really boils down to, and this is where I love this concept of belonging that we were talking about, it's like people reach a point in their life where they feel like they don't belong anymore. They don't belong in their body because they're having all of these health challenges show up. They don't belong in their relationship because the communication is getting a little bit rocky. They don't belong at their job because they're bored to hell of it. They don't belong in their community because there's just this sense of friction that's going on. They've reached a point where they've spent so many years, and we don't even realize that this is happening, right? It's one tiny little micro decision after the next for years or decades on end, where we betray the thing that we need to feel whole, to feel healthy, to feel like we are honoring our Dharma, honoring our dosha, and living in accordance with our gifts and talents and natural innate abilities. We betray that, we sabotage that, we make these little decisions to feel like we should be fitting the mold of what is expected of us. And so eventually we wind up in this place where we're like, how the hell did I get here? I feel so disconnected from what my heart really wants that if I even ask myself that question, I'm not even sure how to answer it. So what I really help people with is moving from that sense of like, how did I get here? I feel like I don't belong, and coming back home to the heart of who they are and experiencing that as vibrant health, emotional relationships, beautiful, communicative conversations, and connection to spirit.
Mm-hmm. And how do people work with you?
Oh, so many fun ways. So there's sort of three main facets to my business. So in times of travel, I do have sacred adventure retreats that are in Central America and the United States, which I love getting people out of their element so we can really kind of shake things up and get to the core of what's going on. So sacred adventure retreats. And since we cannot travel these days, I've actually created a lot of new online programs so folks can come together with me either in a group setting or in a one-on-one setting to do this work, to go on this journey. And obviously the depth of the journey depends on the length of the container. And then I also do continue to support corporations and conferences with health and wellness programming that, you know, we don't quite go into the whole come home to your heart thing. We talk about it more from stress management, conscious communication, honoring strengths and talents within team. But it's an opportunity to kind of sneak in the back door with all this spiritual talk and support organizations in thriving by caring for their employees and giving them the tools to live well.
I know in New Zealand there is a big focus on health, wellness, and I guess support around really mental wellness as
Mhm.
well. And I'm kind of curious for my business. So how do you do that? Is it just online and do you meet with the team?
Yeah, so it obviously is more online now than it ever has been. But kind of the core programming that I have is a 5-week container where we focus on meditation and Ayurveda. And each week we focus on a different aspect of self. So the very first thing we do is start to talk about the doshas so folks can understand who they are, where they shine, and really identify how they can apply those gifts to the workplace.
Mhm.
And this is also really beautiful. So I like to think of Ayurveda like the most ancient version of Myers-Briggs, where you understand each other's personality types and how they fit together. And I feel that this really creates a lot of synergy and mutual respect within the workplace, because folks who typically don't quite understand how or why another does something a certain way sees it through the lens of Ayurveda and understands the contributions that they bring to the table. So it really creates this beautiful team building aspect. And then on the personal level, we look at where are you experiencing stress and disruption in your sleep, in your digestion, in your skin. And we spend 1 week in each of those areas focusing on really simple little lifestyle shifts so that you can become more conscious every day in creating health rather than destroying it.
Very good. Preventative health.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Exactly.
And Monica, where can people follow and find your work if they want to look into it and stalk you?
All stalkers are welcome. Please come. But if you stalk me, let me know. Reach out and say hi. So my website, my company is called Soulbare Wellness, and it's Soulbare, not like the animal. It's Soulbare like threadbare. And so soulbare.com is my website. I'm on Instagram at Soulbare as well, Soulbare. And then Facebook, I just go through my personal page because I love creating connections with people. So I'm Monica Sue Graves is my URL there.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I'm really happy that the Wi-Fi stayed intact for us. I think it dropped out one tiny bit at the start.
Yes, for both of us being in a, strange country sandwiched with water from every direction, I think the tech gods were working in our favor.
Well, and it's not raining for you, is it? When it rains in Panama, the Wi-Fi goes down.
Completely. All last week I was in and out and I was just like, okay, why am I here? Be patient. It's okay. Just breathe. Fortunately, it's all sunny skies this week.
Amazing. Great timing. Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story and all of your knowledge that you've built up along your journey.
Thank you so, so much. It's seriously an absolute pleasure to be able to share and have this beautiful, candid conversation with you. And I'm really sending all my love to those who are listening, that you all can feel inspired to live your most vibrant and whole life possible.
Yes, and definitely reach out to Monica if you resonate with what she's said. Just send her some love for getting on here and sharing her story. And if you want to look into doshas a little bit more, I highly recommend that you have a look at her work.
Thank you so much.
For those of you keen to learn more about doshas and connecting with your true nature, Monica Graves is going to be joining me for a live session on my 6-week release course, which is starting in March. Release is for anyone and everyone who is keen to delve deeper into the mind-body connection, learn more about themselves, learn where emotions get stuck in the body, and most importantly, some techniques on how to start to shift, move, and release these emotions that hold you back either physically or mentally in life. If you want to find out more information, join my live masterclass that's going to be on February the 11th at 11 a.m. New Zealand time. For those of you in the States, Canada, and Europe, that is February the 10th. You can sign up at theartoflisteningtoyourbody.com/release. I look forward to seeing you there, and I will pop the link into the podcast notes. Thanks for learning with me on the Art of Listening to Your Body podcast. If you like what you've heard, I would love if you could rate, review, and share with your friends. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. My handle is The Art of Listening to Your Body. You can join my free Facebook group where I go live regularly to teach you about different conditions and the deeper underlying emotions at play.